Good morning. My name is Eva Tansky-Bloom, immediate past chairperson of the University of Pittsburgh Board of Trustees. Tom Richards could not be with us today and has delegated authority to me to chair today's meeting, and I'm honored to do so. On behalf of Board Chairperson Richards, I would like to welcome everyone to the fall meeting of the board. This meeting has been duly advertised as a public meeting in accordance with the Sunshine Act and is therefore open to members of the public as observers. Due to regulations put in place in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the majority of the university's facilities are closed to the public. Therefore, this meeting is being streamed on the university's YouTube channel and is also being recorded. The recording will be made available via the Board of Trustees website later this week. I've been informed that a quorum is present for the transaction of business. Participation in the meeting is limited to members of the board and to those the board has invited in advance to take part. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Noe Ortega, who is attending as a representative of Pedro Rivera. Noe's been at many of our meetings. Noe, who currently serves as Deputy Secretary of Post-Secondary and Higher Education and was recently nominated to serve as the Secretary of Education by Governor Tom Wolf when Secretary Rivera steps down from that post on October 1st, 2020. Noe, congratulations on this honor and best wishes to you as you begin the next phase of your career. In June, we elected new trustees to the board, and I would like to introduce those who were able to join us today: John Gismondi, Lisa Golden, and Art Rooney, and we welcome you. We wish we were together in person, but we're happy that you're part of the board. We also elected two emeritus trustees, Bob Randall and Sam Zacharias. Bob and Sam, it is my pleasure to welcome you back to the board. The university recently lost one of its most dedicated members and an officer of the university, Susan Gilbert. On June 29th, the board elected June 29th, 2000, the board elected Sue to serve as assistant treasurer of the university, a position she held until she passed away on August 11th of this year, following a long and courageous battle with cancer. Sue provided strategic oversight and effective management of the university's capital finance structure, banking and cash management policies and systems, and short-term investment management. She was a key player whenever the university sought to issue bonds and other forms of financing. She earned both an MBA from our Katz Graduate School of Business and a master's in public policy and management from our Graduate School of Public and International Affairs. Sue loved the university, and she was beloved by her colleagues in the Office of the Treasurer and throughout the university. Please join me in a moment of silence for Susan Gilbert. Thank you. We are now 1 month into the start of our new academic year. It is a year that is unlike any other. I want to express sincere thanks of this board to the faculty, students, and staff who have adjusted to new ways of learning, educating, and working. I also want to commend the entire university community for their efforts to combat the spread of the COVID-19 virus by following all precautions in place, including wearing masks in public and practicing social distancing. Members of our Department of Facilities Management have taken extraordinary steps to ensure our campuses are able to operate in this new environment. I also want to thank those members of the university community who are serving on the front lines, whether it is caring for patients or conducting research. We are grateful to you for your efforts, and as a board, we thank you. I also want to recognize our students and the university administrators for the action they have taken to combat systemic racism. They have been hard at work, and I'm certain that they will succeed in making our university a more just and equitable Pitt. It is gratifying to see all the masks in Oakland that the students and the staff and the faculty are wearing. And I know how hard our chancellor and the whole team have been working, and we thank them as a board. We have a very full agenda today that includes a report from the Pitt Alumni Association, reports from the Ad Hoc Committee on Fossil Fuels, the Governance and Nominating Committee, and the Property and Facilities Committee. And then the Chancellor will present his annual report. So at this point, I'd like to move directly into business. The minutes from the board's annual meeting were distributed to you in advance of today's meeting and can be found in the meeting materials. Could I please have a motion and a second to accept them?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any corrections or additions? Then all those approve of the minutes, please say aye.
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 Any nays? The minutes of the annual meeting of the board as circulated are hereby approved. In addition to the Chancellor's annual report, the fall meeting of the board also includes an annual report from the Pitt Alumni Association. The board has a very close affiliation with the Alumni Association. In fact, nearly 60 of our trustees are alumni of the university. In addition, a number of board members, like myself, are past presidents of the Pitt Alumni Association. It is now my privilege to introduce the current president of the Pitt Alumni Association, Valerie Njai. At the age of 20, Val graduated from Pitt with a degree in elementary education and began her career as a teacher in Illinois. She went on to earn her master's degree in management from the University of Utah in 1973. Throughout her career, Val has worked tirelessly to transform lives and create opportunities for people who have been disenfranchised. After working across the United States and in West Africa, Val returned to Pittsburgh, where she served as executive director and senior vice president at the Bidwell Training Center, a position she held for 37 years until her retirement in 2018. Val spearheaded Bidwell's transition to a highly respected, state-licensed, and nationally accredited adult career school. Through her leadership, Bidwell was named a School of Excellence by its accreditor, the Accrediting Commission of Career Schools and Colleges. In 2013, Val won a national election to become the first African-American elected as an ACCSC, that is the Accrediting Commission, school commissioner in the organization's 50-year history. Val has held a number of leadership roles with Pitt Alumni Association, including playing a vital role within the African American Alumni Council. She has been honored for her work with the PAA Volunteer Excellence Award and the African American Alumni Council's Blue and Gold and Black Colors of Celebration Leadership Award. Please join me in welcoming Valerie Njai to provide the annual report of the Pitt Alumni Association. Valerie.
Thank you for inviting me today to give an update on the Pitt Alumni Association. I have been on the board since 2010, and as the new president, I want to take a quick moment to thank my predecessors, many of whom are on the Board of Trustees and joining us today, for the leadership they have provided to the PAA. I especially want to acknowledge Lisa Golden for her guidance and the hard work she put in over the past 2 years to create the springboard that will be launching us to new heights. I'm pleased to share highlights of the past year, including how the PAA has continued to engage our alumni through these unprecedented times. I'm also excited to talk about where the PAA will be going in the future. First, I want to tell you about the Pitt Alumni Association. Like you, these dedicated volunteers work to advance Pitt's mission, and they strive to enrich the lives of current and future Pitt alumni. Over the past year, we have made some operational changes and enhancements, including updating our bylaws and growing our membership from 25 to 44 board members. We've also found it valuable to institute formal onboarding and off-board processes to help our board members get engaged when they arrive and stay connected when their terms are over, to ensure that their service is of the greatest benefit to the university. The diversity of our alumni board enables us to serve as representatives of our overall alumni population of 320,000 strong. Every school, college, and regional campus is represented by our membership, and members span different generations and geographic regions. Beyond our service in an advisory capacity to the PAA, board members actively engage with alumni and show support for Pitt. For example, our board members know they are expected to make an annual gift to Pitt, and they do. Last year, our board reached 100% annual giving participation by February in honor of the Pitt Day of Giving. We often talk about Pitt alumni, the Alumni Association they want and deserve. This past year, the Pitt Alumni Association went through a rebranding process. And through this process, alumni told us that they want to describe us as innovative, impactful, visionary, prestigious, fun, and ambitious. Our board members agreed and helped guide our rebranding efforts, shaping not only our new visual identity, but also setting our strategic direction to align with alumni expectations. And what are those expectations? Thanks to the Alumni Attitude Survey that was sent to all alumni, we were able to get a better idea of what our alumni want. And we quickly made changes and improvements that will bring value to the Pitt alumni experience and benefits to the entire Pitt community. Resoundingly, alumni told us that they want more networking opportunities and career and professional development programming. In February, Provost Ann Cudd joined us for a 3-city swing of California, which allowed alumni to network with one another and hear an inspiring message from the university's top academic officer. Alumni told us the two biggest barriers to engaging with Pitt are time and distance. Two barriers that are practically eliminated when you focus on digital engagement and create on-demand access to Pitt networks. Pitt Commons is our online networking community. Over the past year, we have more than doubled the user community, increasing the alumni population by 123% and the student population by 150%. We have leveraged this platform to broker connections between students and alumni for formal and informal mentorship, as well as launch projects at Pitt Commons, a new initiative matching short-term opportunities provided by alumni with the talent of our recent alumni and students. This next initiative is hot off the press. We recently launched Ask Pitt Alumni, which uses artificial intelligence to connect students and recent graduates who are seeking advice to alumni who are most likely to answer. We know that for students and recent alumni, finding helpful answers and good advice can be daunting. Ask Pitt Alumni removes the greatest barriers to connecting. A student or recent graduate simply fills out a basic form with their question, no login or account setup required. The platform uses an algorithm to send that inquiry to the 5 or 10 alumni most likely to provide a relevant answer. When alumni receive an email, they can pass on it, forward it to someone else in their network who can help, or answer it themselves via email or by setting up a time to connect later. Pitt alumni said they want us to be innovative and impactful. This is one way we're doing that. Alumni have provided us with a great deal of insights. We've taken all of this information and distilled the Pitt Alumni Association's strategic plan into the following top priorities: enrich the lives of alumni and students, strengthen the Pitt network, advance the university's mission, and create a uniform standard of excellence for alumni relations across the university. As part of this process, we spent a lot of time discussing the Pitt Alumni Association values, including diversity, inclusion, equity, and social justice. Once this plan is finalized, you will see these, as well as other PAA values, infused throughout the document. No review of the past year would be complete without talking about the challenges and opportunities brought about by the pandemic. The PAA took the virtual world quickly by hosting webinars that helped alumni cope, create, and connect in the age of social distancing. For example, we adapted the Ready to Relaunch conference, which was supposed to occur in March and focus on helping individuals who were pivoting careers or re-entering the workforce. We turned a half-day conference into a 4-part webinar series, which ended up engaging more alumni from different parts of the country. And knowing that our newest graduates and youngest alumni face special challenges trying to break into the workforce, we paid particular attention to their needs by hosting Panther to Panther Career Connections, a virtual networking series for recent graduates to attend Zoom sessions with Pitt alumni professionals. With thousands of alumni making remarkable contributions to healthcare and related fields, we launched the Pitt COVID-19 Heroes, a collection of alumni stories that inspired pride throughout the Pitt community. We also stepped up our game in social media so we could more effectively share stories, opportunities, and ideas with alumni everywhere. And COVID-19 did not stop us from celebrating the 100th annual Lantern Night. As students returned to campus last month, we welcomed them with a virtual celebration of the Light of Learning tradition, lighting the cathedral victory lights, giving new students a commemorative candle to light from their campus residence, and sharing alumni memories and messages of encouragement for new Pitt students that resulted in nearly 600,000 social media impressions. I'm very proud to be part of a university that has vowed to create a more equitable and just Pitt and Pittsburgh community, and has very publicly taken action to promote anti-racism. At the beginning of June, the PAA communicated to all alumni that we support the university in these endeavors and encouraged alumni to join us. For our part, the PAA has commissioned an Equity and Social Justice Task Force to define diversity and inclusion as it pertains to alumni relations and examine ways that the PAA can enhance operations and programs to be more inclusive and equitable. The task force is composed of a diverse group of Pitt alumni and non-alum from throughout the United States. They are already hard at work and will submit their report by December 31st. As a member of the African American Alumni Council, I share that various leaders in the organization have been in active discussions with leadership from the university, as well as Black students, in order to influence anti-Black racism initiatives. Since August, members have conducted freshman parent dialogues, spearheaded a webinar, and worked on matching mentors with RISE students. We will continue to create opportunities on all Pitt campuses for Black students to engage with Black alumni, advocate for, and spur meaningful dialogue with them, and support the work that the university is doing. We want to make sure that our Black students know that we are a resource for them at all times. The Pitt Alumni Association remains committed to connecting alumni to each other and to Pitt. We've already started pivoting in a direction that allows us to add value to the lives of alumni and to the University of Pittsburgh. While we recognize there is still a great deal of work to do, we are up to the challenge, and we are very, very fortunate to have Nancy Merritt and her team who do remarkable work. Thank you again for the opportunity to present as part of the Board of Trustees public meeting.
Thank you very much, Valerie. Are there any comments or questions for Val? Thank you. We appreciate all that you do. Thank you very much. We're now going to move on to the report of the Ad Hoc Committee on Fossil Fuels. Dawn, would you please give the report? Dawn Hickton is chairing it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everybody. As chairperson of the Ad Hoc Committee on Fossil Fuels, it is my privilege to provide a report on the work of the committee to date. Over the summer, 6 trustees were appointed to serve as members to the committee. Sunday Bridget Jones, Ed Greffenstedt, Diane Holder, John Marr, Marley Myers, and Herb Scheer. The work of the committee is being supported by Naharari Sastry, our Senior Vice Chancellor and Chief Financial Officer, who is serving as our committee liaison. Assisting Mr. Sastry are Dr. Aurora Sherrard, the Director of Sustainability at the University, and Natalie Carter, Office of Finance Administrator. At the committee's first meeting, held on August 17th of 2020, Board Chairperson Richards delivered the formal charge to the committee. The charge to the committee states in part that 1, the university's consolidated endowment fund is a supporting financial pillar that enables the university to carry out its education and research mission now and into the future. 2nd, ultimate oversight and safeguarding of the endowment rests with the board, which has sole authority to place any non-financial constraints on the investment holdings of the endowment. 3rd, from time to time, members of the university community may express their concern on an issue that impacts societal values to such a level that change is sought in the university's investment of its endowment. And the determination as to whether non-financial constraints should be placed on investment holdings of the university's endowment rests solely with the Board of Trustees. The charge also directs that the committee should provide a findings and options report by January 15, 2021, that provides options on whether, to what extent, and via what methods the university, in its endowment, should consider divestment from fossil fuels in existing and or future investments. And per the committee's charge, the impact of such recommendation should be considered in the context of the university's mission, values, and reputation, existing university policies, including the environmental, social, and governance, otherwise known as the ESG policy that governs the endowment, the need to maintain sound financial investment policies, and such other considerations as the committee may deem appropriate. In order to complete its work, the committee has been provided with extensive background materials that have been including, but not limited to, the Statement of Governance, Investment Objectives, and Policies for the Consolidated Endowment Fund, the Consolidated Endowment Fund Environmental Social Governance Policy Statement, the April 2019 report of the University of Pittsburgh Socially Responsible Investment Committee, and board resolutions related to the university's carbon neutrality commitment and the socially responsible investment screening process and the Pitt Sustainability Plan. The committee has held a total of 4 meetings to date at which no formal action was taken, but full discussions were held. The committee has heard from members of the Fossil Free Pitt Coalition, which provided the committee with a number of documents, including transcripts of remarks made to the UN General Assembly and articles and reports relating to investing. We also heard from Greg Schuler, the university's chief investment officer, who gave a detailed presentation on the university's endowment. The committee has established a compressed and intensive schedule in order to meet the deadline for submitting its report to the board chairperson. Our next several meetings are focused on various aspects of the issue in order to find answers to the questions posed. In that regard, over the coming weeks, The committee will hear from investment officers at other institutions of higher education, foundations, and private firms. The committee also will host public forums to collect input from members of the university community. And in addition, the Office of the Secretary has added a page for the committee on the Board of Trustees website. Visitors to that site will be able to access the charge to the committee and background material provided to the committee members. The site will also provide links to the public forums once scheduled. They're being in the process of scheduled now, and will allow members of the university committee to provide comments or documents to the committee. In closing, I would like to thank the members of the committee for the time that they've made in their schedule to serve with me on this committee. The committee as a whole is aware of the importance of this matter to the university and to the members of its community. Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Do we have any comments or questions for Dawn?
This is Marley Myers. I would just like the full board to know that Dawn is doing an amazing job. It's a very difficult task to chair this committee. It's a big mandate, a lot of work ahead, and I just want to commend Dawn for the work that she's doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marley. Thank you, Marley. But it's going to be it's a laboring work for all of us on the committee and ultimately for the full board. It is an important issue. But thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Then we'll move on to a report of the Governance and Nominating Committee. And Lou Costello, would you please give that report as chair?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Governance and Nominating Committee is charged with the responsibility for, among other things, presenting recommendations to the Board of Trustees for potential board members, including emeritus trustees, and reviewing and updating bylaws in the University of Pittsburgh. In that regard, the material for today's meetings include 2 items for consideration by the board. First, recommending nominees for emeritus trustees, and second, recommending amendments to the university bylaws. Now, as permitted under the Sunshine Act, the committee held an information meeting in August for the purpose of considering these matters, at which full discussions were conducted, but no vote or formal action was taken. Subsequently, at a duly advertised public meeting on September 10th, 2020, the committee endorsed the recommendations contained in the resolutions that are before the board today. As to emeritus trustees, pursuant to the criteria established by the board, any former trustee is eligible for emeritus status if he or she has, among other things, made exceptional contribution to the progress and welfare of the university and has served with distinction and devotion for 10 years or more. Before the board is a resolution recommending the election of 5 former trustees as emeritus trustees: Michael A. Bryson, Robert G. Lovett, Arthur Hartle Munch, William E. Strickland Jr., and Stephen R. Trish. Complete biographies for the 5 nominees are attached to the resolution. Madam Chair, on behalf of the Governance and Nominating Committee, I move the above-named trustees be elected as emeritus trustees of the university.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that resolution?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution carries. And we will invite our newly elected emeritus trustees to the winter meeting of the board. And it's terrific. Thank you. Okay, Lou, could you continue?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As to university bylaws, the next item before the board is a resolution recommending amendments to a section of the bylaws dealing with faculty, specifically Chapter 2, Article 6, Sections 6.1, 6.2, and 6.4, which govern full and part-time non-tenure stream faculty, including defining titles and ranks for those faculty members. The amendments, if approved, would better reflect faculty roles and include changing the reference to non-tenure stream to appointment stream faculty so that faculty are referred to by what they are rather than what they are not. Next, including the prefix teaching in the list of titles to refer to those primary assignments or those whose primary assignments or contributions are instruction, and who are not ordinarily expected to undertake research responsibilities, and adding 2 additional ranks to better reflect faculty roles. First, professor, associate professor, assistant professor, or instructor, and professor, associate professor, assistant professor, or instructor of the practice. These amendments were recommended by the Faculty Affairs Committee of the University Senate, subsequently considered and approved by the Faculty Assembly on November 5th, 2019, and have the support of the University faculty and administration. In addition, at the June 25th public meeting of the Academic Affairs and Libraries Committee, they approved a resolution recommending these amendments to the bylaws. Madam Chair, on behalf of the Governance and Nominating Committee, I move that the board approve the amendments to the bylaws, and this concludes my report.
Thank you. Can I have a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion, any questions for Lou? And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution carries. Thank you very much. We will now hear a report from the Property and Facilities Committee. Peter Verischetti, who is chairperson of the Property and Facilities Committee, could not join the meeting today. And Jack Barber, who is the immediate past chair of the committee, will deliver the report. Jack?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. On September 24th, 2020, the Property and Facilities Committee held a public meeting at which 2 proposals were reviewed and approved. First is the lease of space and contribution to the development of the Community Engagement Center in the Hill New Granada Theater. The University of Pittsburgh desires to enter into planned leases for space in the historic New Granada Theater building located at 2007 Center Avenue in the Hill District neighborhood of the city, as well as a proposed new adjoining building to be developed by the Hill Community Development Corporation. The university plans to occupy approximately 20,000 square feet of the development to be known as the New Granada Square development for a new community engagement center, thereby making a catalytic community development investment in this historically significant African-American neighborhood. The Community Engagement Center will include spaces for the Center for African-American Poetry and Poetics, Jazz Studies, Education, Social Work, and the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence, as well as staff offices, classrooms, and conference space. A digital inclusion center will facilitate programming for science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics, also known as STEAM, as well as digital workforce development and digital literacy. Access initiatives will also be offered by the School of Computing and Information, the Swanson School of Engineering, and Pitt Information Technology. The university's investment in this development is to be structured as a lease or leases with a maximum project contribution of $6 million. Anticipated lease terms are for 10 years at $1 per year, with renewal rights thereafter at fair market rates. The Hill Community Development Corporation is leading this development and will be responsible for all design and construction prior to the university's occupancy. The committee authorized the university administration to finalize and execute agreements for 1 or more leases and the university's investment in the development at a maximum project contribution of $6 million. Second project is the renewal of a lease in Bridgeside Point 1 for the School of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences. The University of Pittsburgh desires to renew a lease for the School of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences at Bridge Point 1, located at 100 Technology Drive in Pittsburgh. The space is occupied by the school's Department of Physical Therapy, including the Doctor of Physical Therapy program, which is listed as #1 in the nation in the U.S. News and World Report's 2020 ranking of best graduate programs. The renewal is for 34,623 rentable square feet of space for a term of 5 years beginning October 1st, 2021. The annual base rent will be $1,038,690 with full rental abatement for the first 3 months of the renewal term. The annual rent will increase by 2% per year for the remainder of the term, along with escalations for the prorated share of increases in operating expenses over a base year of 2021. The committee authorized the university administration to execute the renewal between the University of Pittsburgh and Bridgeside Pitt, LLC. At an earlier information meeting, the committee was provided with an update on the university's pandemic response, including impacts on student housing occupancy, isolation housing, and new building safety protocol, including new pandemic safety ambassador and building safety concierge programs. Information was also provided regarding the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on planned projects related to student housing, parking, and leases for office space. The university administration also discussed its efforts to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in construction projects. Madam Chairperson, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any comments or questions for Jack? Thank you very much for that report. I now call on our Chancellor, Pat Gallagher, for his annual report for the fiscal year 2019 and 2020. Chancellor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome back to the role. First of all, let me special welcome to our new trustees and to our new emeritus trustees and to our newly elected emeritus trustees. It's always exciting at these moments. And Val, a very special thank you to you and the PAA board for a remarkable year and for a great report. It's terrific to see everything that's happening. There's a lot to cover in this fiscal year 2020 report, so let me jump right in. The initial context for our 5-year strategic plan, the plan for Pitt, well, let me just start out by saying we would be at the end of that 5-year period. And so this was the year where I intended to give you a review over the last 5 years with the expectation that we were preparing our next strategic plan. But this has been a fiscal year or an academic year unlike any other. And for the University of Pittsburgh, our academic and fiscal year straddle the calendar years, going from July 1 to June 30. And as you'll see in my report, I'm going to focus really on just the last year in light of the fact that we've rephased our planning so that it will conclude next summer. But it's also really, and it's going to be hard to avoid this, a tale of 2 calendar years, 2019 versus 2020. But I do think that when we step back and look at this, it is an opportunity to highlight some of the progress in a variety of areas across these strategic elements. And let me jump in by doing that, starting with our national and international rankings. Rankings are one of the ways, and not a perfect way, but an important way of measuring progress in this area and for signaling our position to prospective students and their families. Pitt remains the #1 public university in the Northeast, according to the Wall Street Journal and Times Higher Education ranking. It's a position we have proudly held for 4 of the last 5 years. And after making a big jump in the U.S. News and World Report Best Colleges ranking last year, Pitt stayed pretty much at the same position in the 2021 edition, which was released earlier this month. Among public universities, we are 19th out of 209. That's just down 1 place from last year. For those who like to brag, a few spots ahead of our colleagues at Penn State, which is at 23. Among all national universities, we are 58th out of 389, a drop of, again, just 1 place. But specific bright spots amongst key programs at the university include a #1 ranking in physical therapy, number 14 in research medicine, 17 in primary care medicine, and our world rankings in philosophy have us at number 3. I would like to point out this is a time of great volatility in a lot of ways, but this is also true in the business of ranking institutions of higher education. International rankings themselves tend to emphasize research metrics, and there's a rapidly growing number of institutions that are joining those. Domestically, the rankings are shifting right now, de-emphasizing their focus on inputs and student qualifications, selectivity, and emphasizing measures of social mobility, affordability, and measures that look at how effective we are at providing an education to everyone, regardless of differences in those where they come from or their socioeconomic status. So we've addressed many of these shifts, and we expect to see evidence of that in future rankings, but we should continue to see this ranking business to be a little bit volatile for the foreseeable future. The accomplishment of our students is always, for me, a key measure of the university. Pitt students have continued to earn some of the most competitive and prestigious academic honors in recent years, and 2020 continued that trend, and I would say substantially raised the bar. 14 Pitt students were named Fulbright Scholars last year. That is a new record for the University of Pittsburgh. Our previous high was 11, which was set in 2015, and the Chronicle of Higher Education has named Pitt a top producer of Fulbright Scholars once again, making it the 9th time in 10 years for that particular recognition. This is a remarkable track record with what is arguably one of the most recognized international awards, and it shows our commitment to global engagement as well as to life-changing opportunities for our students. 2 students who expect to graduate this spring also earned prestigious scholarships to support their graduate studies. Catherine Flesher was named a 2020 Harry S. Truman Scholar. She joins essentially a class of only 62 in the nation. She is the 13th Truman Scholar in Pitt history. And Tira Altunen was awarded a 2020 Beinecke Scholarship. Now, let me tell you how selective that is. There are no more than 20 Beinecke Scholarships awarded each year, and a university can only nominate a single student in a given year. But for 4 straight years, a Pitt student has been named a Beinecke Scholar. That's truly exceptional work by our students, and it shows not only their individual achievement and abilities, but how well supported they are by their Pitt faculty and staff. Our faculty continue to drive our pursuit of educational excellence. I don't have time in this briefing to go through a lot of it, but I wanted to highlight a couple of new faces and one great recognition. Carissa Slaughterback was named our new dean of the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs over the summer. I think Carissa actually starts officially Monday, so this is really timely. She was previously at the University of Minnesota. She's a scholar of urban planning, and we are just delighted to welcome her to the University of Pittsburgh. She brings with her a wide range of leadership experience in higher education, including in community engagement, which, as you all know, is so important here at Pitt. Anantha Shaker, of course, probably doesn't need another introduction, but I'd have to note that he is not only our new Senior Vice Chancellor for the Health Sciences, but he is also, of course, the Peterson Dean of the School of Medicine. He's a familiar face to many of you on this call and around campus. He's jumped in June and has rapidly taken on some incredibly significant roles, including chairing our healthcare advisory group, which oversees the public health and medical aspects of the university's pandemic response. And of course, our faculty have been recognized with a number of honors this year, but I wanted to single one out. It is truly exceptional. Yvette Bahar, who chairs our Department of Computational Biology in the School of Medicine, was elected to the National Academy of Sciences. This is one of the highest honors that an American scientist can earn. I want to congratulate Yvette for this recognition. It's a great reflection, of course, on her and her amazing work, but we based in that halo, and it really reflects us in a very powerful way on the university itself. On enrollments, let me turn to a little bit of what's happening on the enrollment side. Students, of course, are the center of what we do. This is a year where we were projecting a lot of uncertainty about enrollments, but I do want to spend a little bit of time on who these students are, starting with our graduate and professional students. All the student headcounts for fall 2020 in this presentation are preliminary. I think we're finalizing those next week. But our preliminary count shows that graduate and professional enrollment has declined overall about 1.7%. That's a net loss of about 158 graduate students. But this group has really been dramatically affected by some competing trends. One factor that overshadows this overall trend, of course, is the downturn in international students. The difficulty or the outright impossibility of international travel during the pandemic has led to about a 17% drop among international graduate students, representing around 375 fewer students on our population. Domestic enrollment among graduate and professional students actually went up about a little over 3%, which compensated for the decline significantly during this challenging year. With undergraduate enrollment, it is a different story, but the pandemic is having a measurable effect. First-year enrollment figures are very strong on the Pittsburgh campus, where we've reached or exceeded all of our goals. Out-of-state, non-Commonwealth students are up about 10.5% from the prior year, but Pennsylvania students also came in at about 3.9% increase. It's really encouraging to see the breakout on the bottom half of the chart. We continue to make great progress recruiting students from underrepresented minority groups. Collectively, they're up nearly 15%. The percentage of Black students in the first-year class is up 13%. Latinx and Hispanic students, a group which we've had significant gains for several years, continues to increase, up 5% this year. And Pell recipients are very important to us because those students from lower income families, this has been a barrier for the university because of affordability, but those student population is also up nearly 15% in this new crop of undergraduates onto the Oakland campus. All of these students are central to our vision of a world-class Pitt education. And I should note as well, this is a remarkable class as well. The grade point average of the incoming class is also up over last year, now at 4.1%. So the class of 2024 is exceptional, not only in the traditional ways of measuring the selectivity and the academic profile of the incoming class, but also because they've arrived in the middle of the global pandemic. They are having an experience that is unlike experience of any class before them, and standing up to that challenge. And so we're very proud of them, and I'll come back and talk a little bit about that in later slides. Let me turn to enrollment on the regional campuses. Here the story is a little bit different. The regionals are being heavily impacted by the pandemic. Titusville, let me just say something and step back from that. The Titusville numbers are down significantly, but it's part of the planned transition to the new educational and training hub model, and we've excluded it from these charts. So this data doesn't include that. And what we see here is that the majority of regional students are Pennsylvania residents. A much larger share of them are lower income students, those having Pell grants, compared to the Pittsburgh campus. And last year, about 42% of our regional first-year students were Pell Grant recipients, as opposed to 16% on Pittsburgh's campus. What we're seeing at our regional campus is that some of our most vulnerable students, and I say that from a financial perspective, are bearing the brunt of the effects of the economic downturn that we're experiencing. And so we see a bit of a fall off there. But the undergraduate enrollment overall, all students, all campuses, mirrors the trends that we saw in the first year students. So we're about exactly where we were before in Pittsburgh, down a little bit in Bradford with more modest declines in Greensburg and Johnstown. So all in all, when you consider the incredible uncertainty that we had earlier in the pandemic, when we really didn't know what was going to happen, this is a very positive story and very much in line with what we're seeing nationally around the country. I also want to highlight the key program, the Pitt Success Program, which was launched last year as one of our key initiatives in academic excellence. It included the Pitt Success Pell Match program announced in February 2019. And it represented collectively the largest restructuring of student aid in Pitt's history. Just last year, it represented a $27.1 million investment. So I wanted to remind everyone the program had sort of three goals: to make sure that affordability wasn't a barrier to coming to Pitt, so the attraction of students. And we've talked a little bit about how we've seen a dramatic increase on the Pittsburgh campus of Pell eligible students. The program is also designed to improve retention, removing barriers of affordability for students continuing their education, so we retain them here, and ultimately to improve graduation rates. Pell eligible enrollment has immediately reached record levels after we introduced Pitt Success. This chart shows the difference between the Pittsburgh campus and the regional campuses. But you can see that on the Pittsburgh campus, we have now seen a substantial increase. As I said, on the regional campuses, we think one that was already a much larger population. And we do think that while the Pitt Success program removes a lot of financial need, it doesn't remove all of it. And we may be seeing some students really impacted by that and electing to delay or forego college. So this again mirrors a national situation. We're seeing some of the largest enrollment declines nationally in regional universities and community colleges. So I think this is really what's happening here. We need to focus on that. Obviously, our students from these regional areas are facing additional barriers during the pandemic, and that will be a priority as we look forward. But on the next part of the goal was, of course, to address retention. And this is an interesting chart because it compares the year-to-year retention between first-year and second-year students, but from all students, our non-Pell eligible students and our Pell eligible students. And if you look at the chart in yellow and see what the situation was before the Pitt Success program, you will see that there was a gap. Pell eligible students not being retained at the same rate as non-Pell eligible. And yet, if you look at the bar in blue, that gap in retention has essentially disappeared. Within the Arab margin, it really has disappeared on the Pittsburgh campus. And even with the declines we see on the regional campuses, it's largely disappeared there as well. We make a concerted effort to keep all of our students on track, but as we introduced Pitt Success, we redoubled our efforts to really support Pell eligible students. We started the Provost Academy, a sort of boot camp through which we provide extra support and coaching in navigating first-year academic challenges as soon as the students arrive on campus. And a year and a half in the program, we see these efforts really paying off. This elimination of the gap between Pell students and non-Pell students is an important milestone. It's clearly too early to see the effect of this program on graduation rates. Those are 4 to 6 years after they begin. So we're going to have to continue to watch, but obviously they don't graduate if they don't stay here. So this, as we said, is an important step. Turning to research, I'd like to look at our strategic goal to conduct research of impact. Pitt remains one of the top funded research institutions in the nation, and that trend continued this last fiscal year. The federal government is far and away our largest source of research funding. And while we're working very hard to maintain and grow that level of federal support, I should remind everyone that's competitively awarded through peer-reviewed grants. So that increase doesn't represent new faculty. That's increased competitiveness. Our faculty are simply getting more of a share of that federal support. But one of our strategic goals is to grow non-government funded support and to move into team-based science grants. The overall makeup of our federal sponsors is dominated by the National Institutes of Health. Makes sense since we're a medically oriented university, but we do get significant support from other government sources. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Department of Defense are nearly equal in their support of about $45 million of research and funding, and the National Science Foundation, the U.S. Department of Education, each approaching $30 million in funding as well. One interesting effect on research has been projects related to COVID-19. Overall, the amount of awards being made since COVID began has actually dropped. We believe in part because of workloads and interruptions at the federal level, but the amount of money has actually increased. Many projects were initiated and funded in the last 6 to 8 months during this time of the pandemic, as Pitt researchers rapidly applied and leveraged their existing expertise to address this urgent global need. Earlier this month, a large clinical study led by Derek Angus in the critical care medicine showed definitively that steroids were improving outcomes in critical ill COVID-19 patients. And that work immediately led to a change in World Health Organization treatment recommendations, and that is already making a difference globally, literally saving lives. We have 3 vaccine candidates under development in Pitt research labs. We also have 2 pharmaceutical companies partnering with Pitt on clinical trials on their vaccines. NIH selected Pitt this month to lead a trio of phase 3 clinical trials exploring the use of blood thinners to improve outcomes in adult COVID-19 patients at risk of developing blood clots. So you can see that we are in the middle of the response to this pandemic. You know, our health sciences research always attracts a lot of attention, but the research impact extends across our academic spectrum to the arts and sciences, engineering, law, business, and we've seen a measurable increase in local and national media attention. I know everyone's been watching a lot of news these days. It's been a news-intense period, but I wanted to give you a sense of how our Pitt faculty are making the news. And so we've pulled just a very small set of examples to give you a sense of that.
Major research happening right now in our area. The University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine is now seeking approval from the FDA for a candidate vaccine.
It looks like a small piece of Velcro. It's officially called a microneedle array.
There are some similarities between the current uprisings and earlier moments in our nation's history.
You can be a radical and be peaceful. You can be an extremist and be peaceful.
Use of force experts like David Harris and Scott Defoe seem to be in agreement on this one.
David Harris, a professor at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. David, thanks so much for your input for us here at TRT World.
Carl Kurlander spent 10 years researching and co-producing a documentary about polio.
With polio, there was really no effective treatment. So it was really a sense of helplessness, probably like we're feeling today with coronavirus.
At the University of Pittsburgh Center for Vaccine Research, they're specifically working on the coronavirus vaccine right now.
Paul Dupre, who holds the Jonas Salk Chair and heads the Center for Vaccine Research at the University of Pittsburgh, says the march of history gives today's scientists an advantage. Now, Dr. Dupre, who's trying to adapt the measles vaccine to combat the coronavirus, is one of scores of researchers around the world all working toward the same goal.
Competition is something which drives innovation, but there's another C. We need to be collaborative. And that's not just colleagues in the United States, that's colleagues all over the world.
Just an impressive representation by our faculty in local, national, and international media. We're very proud of them, of course, but I think that doesn't happen overnight. That's reflecting their timeliness of their expertise at a time when the world needs to hear from them. I did want to talk about an area that I know was discussed in yesterday's Research and Innovation Committee. In recent years, we've begun to take a very close look at where Pitt excels in research and where we can do better. What we've seen is that Pitt really excels in securing small or single investigator grants. But an area of opportunity for us is to really do better on large collaborative research projects involving multiple investigators. There's really two reasons for that. One is the federal agencies themselves would like to fund more large-scale grants. It gives more impact to those federal funding efforts. And it's also important because many of the problems that are best tackled by research really work best when you can draw across multiple types of expertise in a comprehensive research environment like Pitt's. So we launched two initiatives aimed at expanding our large-scale collaborative research portfolio this year, including a workshop including boot camp programs to support Pitt researchers, expanding the scope of their research proposals, and using a new funding mechanism called the Pitt Momentum Funds to provide early stage kind of seed funding support and incentives to bring those large research teams together. The first of those funds were awarded in fiscal year 20, and we're going to, of course, report to the group. But this slide really is called a network graph, and it shows who's collaborating with who. So those dots represent proposals, authors on proposals, and when they cross over schools, you see them connected by these gray lines. And you can kind of see the deep interconnection between our very large School of Medicine program, for example, and obviously the other health sciences, but also engineering and arts and sciences, education, social work. We'd like to really harness that and broaden that network graph and give our faculty the opportunity to be supported with that sort of collaborative infrastructure that makes team-based science possible. A real opportunity for us not only to bring in more research funding, but to increase the impact of our work. On the innovation and commercialization side, our Pitt Innovation Institute was really poised for what has been almost routine now, another record-breaking year on all fronts. But it was, as I said, an interrupted year. 2019 and 2020 could not have been more different. But nevertheless, 394 invention disclosures last fiscal year is a new high watermark for the University of Pittsburgh, showing what a strong year they were having. We also, interestingly, set a new record in student startups, despite the slowdown in March and the interrupted spring semester. Those are the new companies that emerge from the creative ideas and work of our Pitt students, many of them working through the Randall Big Idea Center. So, Bob, we want to acknowledge your leadership in supporting the university on that critical effort. Startups based on the university intellectual property are listed separately here as they come through our licensing and technology transfer process. But what you can see is that we have a robust innovation environment. And this is one of the ways that our research does have impact, not only in terms of turning ideas into new products and services, but also economic impact. The innovation and commercialization support, another goal that was in our plan, which is communities, and that tied to economic impact is a good place to start. Pitt is an anchor institution. We not only depend on Pittsburgh and the region around us, but we want to contribute to Pittsburgh and the region around us. Pitt is a pillar of the Pennsylvania economy, providing overall more than $4.2 billion of economic impact every year. Now, these numbers are calculated every 2 years, so we'll be updating this again in the spring. But our spending creates ripple effects or downstream, multiplier effects in the economy by stimulating local businesses in the supply chains, increasing household spending of people earning income from those businesses, and so forth. So our economic impact comes from our direct investment, but it also comes from the 37,000 plus Pennsylvania jobs we support and the nearly $2 billion of overall research activity happening here. This is not a byproduct of what we do. It is an essential part of our role in many communities across the Commonwealth. One piece of news that came in this week that I'm very proud of is you may have heard that Pitt's Small Business Development Center was named the #1 such center in the country out of more than 1,000 by the U.S. Small Business Administration. So this National SBDC Excellence and Innovation Award is an exceptional accomplishment by our SBDC, but it shows the ways in which Pitt is directly helping small businesses through our Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence thrive and grow their businesses. And we're very proud of what they've accomplished. But, I have to, also talk about the way our community, our people contribute to our region. This year's United Way campaign, which wrapped up at the end of April with total pledges of more than $718,000, represented the largest amount ever raised by our campaign. More than half of that was donated to the United Way's Impact Fund, which supports agencies that provide support to key populations and populations in need in Western Pennsylvania. Examples include struggling families, children, seniors, and people with disabilities. This was the highest total ever raised for the United Way of Southwestern Pennsylvania. And our combined United Way campaign is just one way that Pitt's community participates, in this case through donations and volunteer work. You add the student work and the student volunteers. Overall, we estimate $73 million worth of charitable contributions to Pennsylvania communities every year when you put that all together. And then, of course, COVID hit and our community faced new needs. And once again, the Pitt community stood up and jumped in to help. I'm really proud of the way faculty, staff, and students righted themselves, looked beyond their own fear and concerns, and quickly looked for how they could help others. Within 10 days of the stay-at-home orders that swept the state in the spring, our Office of Government and Community Relations stood up a task force to organize the Pitt Pandemic Service Initiative, and they identified ways that people could volunteer in their communities. Over 500 staff members and 200 students worked almost 3,000 volunteer hours. And through this program, 30 regional organizations received volunteer assistance to meet critical needs coming from the pandemic. We partnered with the Neighborhood Resiliency Project in the Hill District to disrupt virus transmission in medically underserved communities. And since March, they have trained more than 100 community health deputies, 11 of whom are working with immigrant and refugee community members. Pitt also partnered with Beyond the Laptops. It was a campaign to refurbish and provide computers to more than 1,000 families. Can you imagine dealing with COVID with all of the social distancing without the benefits of digital engagement and online learning? And they set up a community tech help desk for families and teachers and nonprofits across the region. A reflection of this commitment to our community was earned by the university this year. In 2020, Pitt earned the Carnegie classification, which is the most visible and prestigious validation for our community engagement in higher education. Many times the Carnegie classification is talked about as in terms of research recognition, but this designation particularly focuses on leadership and community engagement. And we were noted for our university-wide excellence in this area, including exemplary alignment between our campus mission, our culture, our leadership, our resources, and practices that support dynamic engagement in our communities. Of course, the centerpiece of that, I have to believe, was our community engagement centers. 2 community engagement centers have already reached that phase where they have a physical manifestation of our partnership between specific neighborhood communities in Pittsburgh. And they're one of the major reasons I believe we were recognized by this Carnegie classification. Homewood, of course, was our first CEC. It grew bigger in 2020. There was a 10,000 square foot expansion completed in March. It was called The Well, which stands for Wellness, Education, Living, and Learning. And the new space can serve thousands of community members annually. It represents an active and thriving partnership between the Homewood community and 8 different schools at Pitt. led by the School of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences, School of Education, but it also includes the schools of pharmacy, medicine, social work, nursing, public health, and dental medicine. Of course, you just heard earlier, the Hill District Community Engagement Center is also gaining momentum this year. As the trustees are well aware, there is a major expansion in the works, and we've committed now to a permanent location for the CEC, including it among the renovation and expansion of the historic New Granada Theater. This is a location that marries the incredible historic preservation of this iconic and important place with the commercial corridor revitalization that the Hill District is facing. The new location will include a digital inclusion center, jazz studies, a STEAM studio, a center for African American poetry and poetics. And it's worth noting that the three schools most active in the Hill District are completely different from the schools that were involved in the expansion Homewood, representing the fact that these community engagement centers really represent the unique character of the engagement between the university and the community. In the Hill, it's the schools of arts and sciences, computing and information, and engineering, revealing that our university as a whole is committed to community engagement. Put together, these two CECs attracted $1.8 million from economic development grant funds and philanthropy last year. So they are generating enthusiasm around the region and around the country, gaining momentum as we continue to work on this critical program. The fourth goal area in the plan for Pitt is to promote diversity and inclusion. And on this topic, it's really hard to not be impacted by the difference between 2019 and 2020. So I want to step back and just remind everyone that this goal has really been in our plan since the very beginning. And we entered the year way back in 2019 with great momentum. One of the things we were doing at the beginning of the year was celebrating. In fact, we were celebrating an anniversary of 50 years since the occupation of Pitt's Computer Center and the Hillman Library and the foundation of Pitt's Black Action Society. That period of time was a significant event in Pitt history. It coincided with the civil rights movement happening in the United States and in Pittsburgh, but it also was a moment of empowerment and engagement. And we celebrated that history together, recognizing the gains that have been made and the gains that we still had yet to make. It generated enthusiasm among our students, our faculty, and especially the alumni, many of whom participated in those events 50 years ago. The African American Alumni Council held a special event at homecoming. Pitt alumni who participated in that act of civil disobedience to address racial inequality returned to campus and had a chance to speak to our students, including leaders of our current Black Action Society. And then 2020. And what we realize is that many of the issues facing our country, our institution, and even our region are still in front of us, and they are acutely important as we face a fresh national reckoning of our troubling relationship with issues of race and equality and justice. And it's interesting to me that, really on the heels of this 50th anniversary, we have a new seminal moment, a watershed moment for the nation that's actually continuing, even with the heartbreaking news this week from Louisville. So this topic stands in the backdrop of really redoubling our efforts, turning our examination back onto ourselves and making sure that we live up and become the university that we expect ourselves to be, both as an institution, seeking a place that's diverse, that embraces that diversity, where everybody belongs, with equity and fairness, so that every Pitt student has an opportunity to excel, but also recognizing that our mandate goes far beyond our own walls. We have to be that anchor institution to this region. The Pittsburgh Renaissance that we're so proud of has not penetrated many of the neighborhood communities right next to us, and that we have to do much better. And finally, recognizing that any great university is tackling the great challenges of the day, nobody can fail to recognize that racial injustice, racial inequality, systemic racism are issues that we as an institution, as academics, as scholars, as researchers, as students have to address. And so I would expect our plan next year, our discussion of this strategic element will be heavily impacted. In fact, we delayed the completion of our strategic plan by an additional year to allow the Pitt University community to really re-engage and make sure we step up to this moment and reflect that in describing the university we want to be in the future and doing it in a concrete way where we can hold ourselves accountable. Let me go back to what we were focused on last year. One of the elements that we have been focused on in this area for the last 5 years was enrollment. I want to point out that we have been making solid progress on our goals of making our student body more diverse. This has been a sustained effort. We've been able to say almost every year that this has been the most diverse incoming class on record for Pitt, and that's true again this year. If you start at the bottom of the graph, the growth in Pell Grant recipients, which we talked about earlier, which measures an important socioeconomic diversity in our student body, is certainly improving, particularly with the Pitt Success Program. But if you look back over 10 years, our Latinx population was incredibly small. So we've seen it grow, relatively speaking, by leaps and bounds. But relative to the country as a whole, we still have a ways to go. The number of Black students has increased steadily, growing by 44% since 2011, but certainly with room for much more growth there as we reflect the diversity around us in our country. And just pointing out that, these goals of attracting and increasing the diversity has always been bringing in stronger and stronger classes, not only measured by diversity, but also measured by our student profile. Our grade point average of the incoming students has increased right alongside these metrics. So we're embracing our role of increasing diversity at an exceptional university all at the same time. Now, we focused on the student body, but now we're increasingly looking at how do we diversify our faculty and our staff, two areas of remaining opportunity for the university. Last year, we initiated a cluster hire in Latinx studies. This is a strategy that directs resources and provides financial incentives to support an important area of inquiry in areas that we think we need to advance. In this case, the study of the Latinx experience in the United States. At most institutions, this field consists of studies in literature, politics, history, and culture. We're actually doing something quite innovative by taking an approach where Latinx studies can belong to all areas, including areas like business, social work, communications, education, and we hope to the health sciences. By 2023, we expect to have 10 new faculty members exploring Latinx studies in multiple schools. This will create exciting opportunities for interdisciplinary collaboration. It will help us attract students and other faculty. And we think it not only will build diversity, but it will give us momentum because that's what's happened elsewhere. This is a model we can build on. And we think it's a great model to address the Black experience in America in a similar way. University leadership is committed to making Pitt a place where the curriculum and the research environment are more inclusive of topics relating to the Black experience and Black culture and policies and practices that work against racism. So we're excited about building a community of learners to explore these subjects for multiple reasons. First, the possibilities for conducting meaningful scholarship in this area are incredibly important, as I discussed. But at the same time, it can help us achieve more diversity on our campus. And maybe most important is that these types of subjects are ones we must explore if we're ever going to find solutions to these challenges we are facing today. That's where universities are meant to be. Now, there's a couple new faces in our efforts. One person deeply involved in these efforts is John Wallace. I want to recognize John. He's the David E. Epperson Chair of the School of Social Work. He was recently appointed as our new Vice Provost for Faculty Diversity and Development. And I can tell you, John has jumped in with both feet, probably even from before he was actually officially there. I also want to mention Clyde Wilson-Pickett, welcoming Clyde to our campus. He's our new Vice Chancellor for Diversity and Inclusion. Clyde is an alumnus of Pitt's education program. He got his Doctor of Education here, and most recently held the position of Chief Diversity Officer for the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities system. I want to turn now to our goal to embrace the world. One of the reasons Pitt is so ready to engage in global collaboration to address the pandemic is that we were already engaged in research around the world. It's always been there. It is certainly getting more challenging than ever. Not only is international mobility is down, but fear and uncertainty and mistrust are high. It has become a challenging environment to do globally engaged research, but it is essential to what we are and what we do. And as an aside, I should point out that for all the news coverage looking at, which country is winning the vaccine race, in my view, the real story behind the vaccine development, which will be one of the most rapid in human history, was the breadth of the global collaboration that made that possible. Scientists working together, sharing data across the globe, sharing practices. And of course, it's going to heat up as it becomes closer to a commercial activity, but it really is a global scientific success story. On the enrollment side, this has been a challenging time for our global strategy. Pitt welcomes students from all over the world, but our international students clearly face the largest challenges of any student group in 2020. Our numbers aren't final yet, but overall we're down approximately 20% over last fall, about 13% in undergraduates and 23% in the graduate student population. A significant number of international students are deferring coming to Pitt till next spring or later, hoping that some of these travel barriers and other restrictions see some relief. And we certainly hope to see them here. But those decisions, of course, will depend on the state of the pandemic and the response of countries around the world to that pandemic. Our global strategy is not just about bringing students internationally to Pitt, it's also about our Pitt students going abroad. And a hugely important and vibrant aspect of our program has been our study abroad program. It's been growing for years, showing a 32% increase in student and participation over the last 5 years. The number of faculty participating has nearly doubled. And that participation from across the university is really important to us. We've had participation from every school on campus over the past 5 years. STEM participation was a strategic target for us, and that increased by 43%, creating more options for our students. And over 5 years, we developed programs or support in over 120 countries. So the pandemic was obviously a major blow to this program, as you can see from the chart. The Study Abroad Office and our Pitt Global Experiences Office remain committed to global engagement for our students and faculty. I should tell you, this is the first place where the impact of the virus was first felt by the university, going all the way back into December and January. And we were able to safely bring all of our students and faculty back. And now the question is really, how do we provide that global experience to our students with all of this interruption and travel? So we're completely reimagining our mission and restructuring the office. Programming offerings and global experiences available to undergraduate and graduate students are being changed. Some of these changes include taking the full semester offerings and breaking them into modules or hybrid programs. We're ramping up the development of the domestic division of our study abroad program to include anchor sites in domestic locations, places like Los Angeles, Boston, and Miami. We're creating virtual experiences that connect domestic students to our international network. And we're developing new program models like winter break and first-year experiences for our incoming students. So as we look forward to the next several years, it's clear the need to remain globally engaged is really only going to grow despite all of the headwinds that are being faced. And we are committed to leaning forward against those headwinds and embracing the challenges to make sure that our students and faculties have the global opportunities they need to be successful. The final goal area I'll touch on in my report is foundational strength. The foundational strength really refers to the enablers, those things that we need to be successful. And I'm going to touch quickly on sort of the facilities, the resources, and the people that are key enablers for us, and touch on some key milestones. On the physical space side, our campus continues to be certainly one of our most visible assets, even though it was fairly empty recently because of the pandemic. But it's one that really requires reinvestment to not only maintain, but to respond to the needs of the university. So when we shut down in mid-March, we had several important projects that were underway. All have now resumed at this point, including the ones on this slide. The overhaul of our front yard, the Bigelow Boulevard project, is accomplishing several things at once. It's highlighted by safety, sustainability, aesthetics. We hope that will reopen sometime in October, although a couple of the final touches are going to have to wait till December. Our supplier of some of the concrete planters and safety barriers was affected by the pandemic. So we're going to have some temporary features up to allow us to start using Bigelow Boulevard in the meantime. The home of our medical school, the Allen McGee Scaife Hall, is getting a major expansion and upgrade to its educational facilities, which will reflect our status as the home of a top 10 medical school. And that facility is also underway and on track for an August 2022 completion. The Peterson Sports Complex addition up on the top of the hill will be largely completed by the end of October this year. It improves facilities for our current student athletes and coaches and supports the recruitment of those to come, including softball, baseball, soccer, and lacrosse. The project at 5051 Center Avenue is transforming a historic manufacturing place, the former Ford Auto Assembly building, into a world-class research facility featuring 250,000 square feet of state-of-the-art laboratory and research space, including a new home for the Department of Immunology and the Starzl Transplantation Institute. That project is also on track for completion November of 2021. An integral part of each of these projects, we also remain on target for reaching our sustainability goals. In fiscal year 2020, the university reached its lowest total energy use per square foot, so that measures our efficiency, since we began tracking this figure in 2008. Now, the pandemic shutdown did contribute to energy reduction, but for the fourth consecutive year, we remain on track to meet our goal to cut building energy consumption by 50% by the time we reach 2030. Getting us there were some key initiatives. Our facilities team is advancing energy reduction measures in 25 targeted campus buildings. Our relamping for sustainability program work was completed in 12 buildings. We anticipate saving more than $200,000 annually with additional planned LED lighting upgrades on the horizon from that program. We are also expanding our renewable energy portfolio. Our sustainability plan challenges the university to reduce or procure 50% of our electricity from renewable resources by 2030. Last year, just over 18% of our university energy originated from renewable. And to close this gap, we're finding some very innovative and bold solutions, including a local solar power purchase agreement announced earlier, and the previously announced deals to purchase local solar and hydropower. And with those projects, we envision renewables making up more than 36% of the Pittsburgh's electricity mix by 2024. Well on track for our goal. In the area of financial support, obviously also a tale of 2 years on philanthropic support for the university. And while total giving in FY20 is down compared to the year before because of COVID, This decline actually masks some important achievements in key performance metrics, and I want to highlight those. One of these is the remarkable growth in first-time donors. This is an important predictor of how our long-term fundraising is going to succeed in the future. This is the pipeline. And we grew the number of first-time donors by 36% last year. We've also seen strong increases in major giving, both in the number of donors and in the dollars raised. And what we're hearing from potential donors is that this picture they're getting of the university right now is one of Pitt's strong leadership during challenging times. And that reputation is one of the foundational strengths that is maintaining this level of excitement and participation in our philanthropy programs. It's also something we're going to have to continue to nurture to thrive in the months and years ahead. Now, on the overall budget picture of the university, the question you may have in your minds is, how are we doing? Well, the next two slides kind of give you a snapshot of our overall budget situation. First, in terms of revenues, our research achieved another record high, up 2% from the year before. Our net tuition and fees were essentially level, reflecting meeting our enrollment, and freezing our tuition. So the concerns we had earlier about seeing a big erosion of enrollment did not materialize, and so that's been relatively stable. Our first year of the Pitt Success Program, we invested $27 million. Our support from the Commonwealth remained strong as they passed an appropriation bill, even in the middle of this pandemic. And of course, the Federal CARES Act, which was part of the COVID response from the federal government, we received about $23 million in overall CARES Act funding. The returns from the endowment and our investment income have remained relatively strong, even in the middle of the pandemic. One area we did see negative impacts was in the auxiliaries. These are the food and room and board services of the university, due mostly to the partial year refunds of room and board that we issued during the spring term, and some reduction in revenue in areas like parking and university store operations. On the expense side, we looked for ways to address our expenses last year. You will see an increase in compensation, but I have to note that's largely an accounting change from last year. There was a shift in how the University of Pittsburgh physicians account books the reimbursements for physician income. So that increase of over $85 million is actually offset by revenue on the other side. So that's an accounting change, but it's essentially consistent with just the compensation increases in last year's pool. We did institute, as many of you know, a hiring freeze, and we offered early retirement incentive programs to both faculty and staff. Those savings in compensation will show up in future years, not in last year, of course. And outside of compensation, the expenses were down mostly because of decreased activity from the pandemic. So travel, supplies, and other professional services were curtailed. The $50 million of estimated overall COVID specific impact cut across both revenue and expense lines. We certainly saw lost revenue in room and board and other revenue streams due to things like the closing of the dental clinic and our campus stores. But we also saw increased cost as we transitioned to remote learning last year and started planning for the fall, preparing the campus, implementing Flex at Pitt teaching model, and so forth. So as you look at the overall picture, we did see a significant impact from COVID. We're in a relatively good position to address those concerns without undermining our long-term stability, but this is going to be a real financial headwind that we will face in the coming year and in the years to come. I think that the fears over an acute financial emergency are giving way to concerns of a sustained if you will, budgetary contraction. So we'll have to continue to watch that. And to sort of round out with what I think is the most important enabler of all in all of this, it's the buildings are important and the resources, of course, matter. We couldn't do it without it. But our our key to our success is the people at the University of Pittsburgh. And I just wanted to end on kind of a reflection of what this year, this remarkable, unusual split year has meant for our faculty, our staff, our students. Everybody at this university has been impacted by this pandemic and everything that has happened in the last year. What's so unusual about this emergency is that most emergencies are contained. They happen somewhere. You're in the emergency zone or you're out. And they're contained in time. They happen to a certain place and we do the best we can until it's over. Now we've entered a period where it's with us all the time, no matter where you go, work, home, it's with your family, it's global, it affects travel, and it's open-ended. And we're obviously all dealing with the uncertainty, the fear, the concerns. It's a lot to ask under those circumstances for people to work even harder, to give up all of the certainty and routines and predictability in their work and personal life to essentially reinvent a university so that it can continue its mission in the presence of a pandemic, which is what we were trying to do. And it's been hard. I just want to say it's been really hard. I've seen people working harder than they have ever worked before. I've seen them working despite the fact that they're also caring for children at home or caring for family and loved ones or parents. I've seen them doing it despite uncertainty for their own economic situation. And yet they do. And it's that ability of the university to tip in together, to kind of roll with the punches and deal with all of this uncertainty. I've been really unable to give people the kinds of answers that I know they want to have. Our planning even has been based on being agile and flexible and reactive. Incredibly difficult things to do. And everyone has stepped up. And so I just wanted to end with a note of appreciation, but also a note to the board just to recognize that if you are going to attribute our success over the last year in any of the things we've talked about, you have to give that success, that credit for that success back to our community. Under some of the most difficult circumstances any of us have ever seen in our lifetimes, people stayed focused on why we're here, to provide that educational opportunity, to advance the frontiers of knowledge, to develop vaccines, to save lives at a time when they themselves are victims and being affected. And I know I'm saying that to a board who is also in your own lives dealing with this, but I just want you to know that's the key to our success. And that's, for me, the takeaway message of my annual report for the last year. So I want to thank all of you for your attention. And most of all, I want to thank everybody in the university for your service to our institution. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor. And I think on behalf of the board, I can say that we all thank you, your executive team, the administrative workers, our faculty, our students, the staff. We recognize how hard you have been working, and you are pulling us through this incredibly unusual time. And thank you. Thank you.
Eva?
Yes.
I think it would be appropriate for the Board of Trustees to put that into a resolution that thanks and congratulates whether it be the staff or the leadership, the student body and the faculty, and every employee we have for the outstanding job they've done in this particular pandemic.
It's a great idea. Javette, can we do it and say we're passing this with the details will be written at a later time?
Sure. It's the pandemic year. We can do anything.
Okay. So Chuck, are you making that motion?
I would be happy to.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have any discussion?
Great idea, Chuck.
Great idea. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is passed, and we officially thank all of you. Officially. Before we close, there's just a few more things. I'd like to extend my gratitude to the faculty and staff members who will be departing the university as part of the early retirement plan, which was actually part of this whole engagement that we've been hearing about. We are grateful to you for your service and your contributions over these many years. Included in that group are 2 members of our Office of Academic Ceremonies and University Events, Graham Park and Mary Beth Vasco. Although they have worked behind the scenes, they are responsible for the success of the university's many ceremonies and events. When we could meet in person, Mary Beth was a constant presence at the board committee meetings on Thursdays and at all of the university's events. And I'm going to ask Mary Ellen Callahan to say a few words about Mary Beth.
Thank you very much, Eva. In 1989, I started work as a work study at the physics department, working with Mary Beth Tilly Vasco and her colleagues to help support the department's grant. I would frequently discuss Notre Dame football with Professor Jim Marr, but could never really engage Marr's quiet graduate student, Mr. Pat Gallagher, who did not appear to find me as funny as Mary Beth did. It was such a pleasant surprise to be reunited as trustee 20 years later and to work with Mary Beth now in her role in special events, as Eva has said. Mary Beth was a stalwart presence at every trustee event, from convocation to commencement, from Johnstown trustee meetings to fall football games. Mary Beth and I were happy in 2014 when that quiet graduate student decided to rejoin us at the University of Pittsburgh, this time as Chancellor. I think he still doesn't find me as funny as Mary Beth does. But with that said, Mary Beth's smile, her humor, and her unflappable demeanor at every trustee meeting will be sorely missed. We wish Mary Beth and her husband best wishes for her retirement after 40 years and 11 months at the University of Pittsburgh. Thank you, Mary Beth.
Thank you, and we applaud what you just said. Graham Park, the director of the office, is known for her creative flair, her wealth of ideas, and her deep knowledge of academic ceremonies and protocol. Graham and her team worked tirelessly on planning every board event and university ceremonies. When your caps and gowns magically appeared before each commencement and convocation ceremony, Graham's team made it happen. Graham was always ahead of the trends in event planning and was thought of as a trailblazer by her colleagues and peers. Her attention to detail ensured that every event, no matter how large or small, had that special touch, which was often referred to as the Pitt way. I'd like to commend both of them for their dedication and service. And let me say a few words just from my heart about Graham Park. I had these crazy ideas over the last 5 years that we were going to move the board to different places around the campus, different places in Pittsburgh, outside of Oakland, and even outside of Pittsburgh. And Graham took those crazy ideas and she made them into real, wonderful events. She is the most innovative, can-do person I have ever met. I never worried that an event was going to come out the right way because I knew Graham was planning it. So thank you, Graham, from all of us who have benefited from your creativity. So we want to commend both of them for their dedication and service and wish them the best as they move into this next phase of their lives. Also among our retirees is Kim Honath. Throughout her career at the university, Kim has earned an excellent reputation for, among other things, her attention to detail, her commitment to her work, her mastery of the written word, and her care and thoughtfulness for her coworkers. She has provided support to 4 chancellors, 6 board chairs, and hundreds of trustees. The university has benefited from Kim's enthusiasm and loyalty, as she has made immeasurable contributions to the progress of the institution, for which we will be forever grateful. I can tell you again on a personal note, I have called Kim so many times. She's on my speed dial, and she has been able to really put meat on all of our agenda items, all of our committee reports. She has helped us say what we need to say, and we have all benefited from her hard work. Kim, through all of your work for the University and Board of Trustees, you have earned the admiration and respect of the board and the university community for your integrity, devotion, and talent. We offer our deepest appreciation for your service and dedication to the university, and our sincere best wishes as you enter the next phase of your life. I'd like to remind everyone that the next meeting of the board is scheduled for the morning of February 26th, 2021. Is there any new business to come before the board?
Eva, I just wanted to make one comment. In the middle of the pandemic and in the middle of all the preparations, we have to make choices, and the volunteer retirement incentive programs that we put in for faculty and staff clearly made a lot of sense in terms of giving people that choice and at the same time helping the university's budget situation. And it all looks great until it becomes real. And now it's personal, and it's about people that we know and love and care for who have just given so much to the institution. And we've just talked about 3 people, and it's almost, I feel like family are leaving. They've been so important to me and my team and my life and my family. I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart, but I just want to remind everybody of the hundreds of people leaving the university under these circumstances. We owe them an enormous debt of gratitude for their collective contribution to this institution, and just our enormous thanks and well wishes as they took that choice, I hopefully both for themselves and for the institution. But this is the bittersweet part of this, and I just wanted to share that sentiment for the hundreds of folks that we will be losing. This will be a tough chapter in some ways.
Thank you. Any other comments or new business? Then this meeting is adjourned. Please all be safe and be healthy, be well. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Eva, for sharing.